This is the Nightshade Cult, a podcast macabre.
We bid you welcome. Enter freely and of your own will.
I'm Nick Grimm.
And I'm David Graves.
And we will be your horror hosts for this dissection of Werner Herzog's 1979 gothic horror, Nosferatu the Vampire, or in German, Nosferatu Phantom der Nacht.
Good evening. Yeah, I was reading about this, and I saw that there was a German title. I thought about including that, but yeah, this is like the same movie we already saw.
Do you feel like it was the same movie? Like, do you feel like it's redundant to watch both of them, or do you feel, because Herzog feels there's significant differences?
There are differences.
Yeah.
I found myself while I was watching this enjoying the beats that I knew were coming.
Yeah.
But also enjoying the artistic differences and enjoying the nuance between the different performances, the way that the characters were played. Like, particularly Harker is portrayed a lot differently.
Oh yeah, and it's totally different performance. And Lucy, for some reason, he reversed Lucy and Mina's names. Mm-hmm. It's not the first movie to do that. It happens a lot of the time. For some reason, Lucy and Mina get their names swapped around. But Lucy is a very interesting character in this movie. Basically the hero of the movie.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this. I mean, spoiler alerts if you haven't watched the previous one. It ends the same way with Lucy making Count Orlok Dracula wait in the sun. She lures him in.
Honey traps him.
Yeah.
Basically, it's too juicy. The blood's too good, and just keep him drinking until the sun comes up.
And it works.
It does work. Men and even vampire men are simple creatures and easily done in by a beautiful woman.
Yeah. Well, I was pretty happy to watch this movie, honestly, because I enjoyed the earliest, the first Nosferatu quite a lot. And I anticipated that I would like this, and I did.
Okay.
I really liked that it was super easy to find. You can see this on YouTube in its totality. And it's just, I'd never seen this movie. I like Dracula movies, so I'm glad I saw it.
Yeah. My opinion of the movie has drifted a little bit. I was excited to watch it, and I still like it quite a bit, but things have come up in my research of the movie that have...
Oh, there's some troubling elements? We got some creepos going on?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, that seems, it's the 70s. It's Hollywood or Hollywood adjacent.
It's Germany. Whatever.
It's
not Hollywood.
It's the movie industry. You get creepos.
Yeah. Klaus Kinski is a very bad person. Very, very bad.
I hate to hear it because his performance was excellent.
I hate to hear it. I hate to learn the things that I've learned because I have to admit, it affects how I feel watching it.
So I didn't know that. Okay. I went into this completely blind. And it's kind of like if you were to listen to like the first couple of Burzum albums without ever knowing anything about the dude, you'd be like, this is the shit. And then you'd be like, well, damn.
Literally every time Burzum just comes up on my Spotify, like, because I've let DJ X run with it. Burzum comes up, and I go, "This is good. What is this?" And I pick up my phone and look at it. Every single time, like I hear Burzum, I pick it up to see who is this.
Yeah, like, this is fucking great.
Yeah, that is my reaction every time I hear it, and I go, "Oh no, that guy's a Nazi."
Gotta thumbs down this.
Yeah, I was like, "God damn it, it's so good," and I hate it. Yeah. And that's the same, like watching this movie, his performance is incredible. But he's a monster. Or he was. He's dead.
Okay.
Rotten hell. But
we will speak ill of the dead.
Yeah, in this case. And he was sort of Herzog's muse. He was the star of 5 of his movies. Herzog had known him since Herzog was 14 and Kinski was in his 20s. They lived in the same apartment building in Munich. He made a documentary about him called My Best Fiend.
Huh.
And he calls him a demon, a monster, the ultimate pestilence.
Wow.
But also one of the most significant actors of the 20th century and of German cinema. And they have a complicated relationship because he's not unaware of what an awful person he is. But it's hard when you've known someone since you were a literal kid.
Yeah, that's sad. That's really sad because I think that the performance is extremely noteworthy.
It is. It's sad.
It's one of the best Dracula performances.
Yeah, because it's almost like a proto Louis.
Exactly.
From Interview with the Vampire, in that this is a depressed, lonely vampire. That. Doesn't love his eternal life.
I saw shades of Louis and shades of Lestat in him because he's just like with the physical acting.
Yeah.
Because Tom Cruise does a lot of physical acting.
Yeah, for
and so I just think that this was a very influential performance, and we'll get to that as we get to it. But is there anybody else in here we should hate?
No, I don't think so. I think everyone else is as clean as someone that made movies in the 70s can be.
Which means don't get a black light near them.
A lot of glow.
I mean, it's either powder or liquid. So
I was gonna say probably a lot of both cocaine and fluids.
Yeah, so this was a pleasing movie to watch, even though it has a lot of similarities, and I definitely think that it was worth the time.
Yeah, I listened to about just under an hour long panel with Herzog at a screening of the movie, talking to film students.
Okay,
and his take was very interesting because he said that he didn't consider it to be a remake of the Murnau film. It's a homage to that movie. And it's also not an adaptation of the novel Dracula, which he doesn't think is very good.
Okay.
It is, it's his homage to Murnau's film. And he said that his generation of German filmmakers had no father generation because of the war. Because of the war. So that generation either fled the country or were Nazis.
Yeah.
So German filmmakers of his generation had to go to their grandfather's generation to find their roots.
Yeah, there's a lot of expressionist ideas in this movie, and I can definitely see that. It's I agree with Herzog that the book isn't very good. Like, I read it.
I love Dracula. I think Dracula is
But I read a lot of books, and I read a lot of, and I like to write, and I teach writing, and it's just there are so many things about it that are not artfully crafted in a way that an audience can consume, and it just doesn't go down easy.
That's true. We've talked about this a few times. It's like a found footage movie of a book.
Yeah, it's like comparing Blair Witch Project to, a proper horror movie
with a narrative. Yeah. Oh, that's very true, because it's journal entries and correspondence and newspaper articles.
And I do find it to be interesting, but I like the film adaptations better than the book.
I think that's fair, and that's probably what more people are familiar with.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure someone has rewritten Dracula, but as a proper narrative,
interesting
novel like you would read a novel today.
Huh? Maybe. Yeah,
I have to look that up. See, and then just re-release it because it's in the Creative Commons.
Yeah, and that's so when he made this movie, this was when Dracula had entered the public domain. So he felt Herzog is sort of a guerrilla filmmaker that does things on the edge of legality often.
Yeah.
And so it went into public domain, and so he didn't go after the rights or anything. He's just like, I can do Nosferatu because Nosferatu is based on Dracula, and Dracula is public domain. And so the corporation that at that point was controlling the Murnau film threatened to sue him, and also representatives of the original screenwriter, Galen, threatened to sue him. And he was like, basically, you guys were already convicted of stealing, so try me.
Yeah, you lost in court.
Yeah.
They said that you violated her copyright, so therefore
you own no copyright.
Yeah, you are just, you're thieves. I'm not stealing from you. I'm using public domain.
I am a thief with no loot. And I said, go ahead and try.
Yeah, I think he's right. This is public domain stuff, you know. It's like those people who are making like the Winnie the Pooh stuff and whatnot.
Yeah, Blood and Honey.
Yeah.
Oh man,
I haven't seen that. Probably never will.
No, unless like that's if you beg us to do it, Cultists, maybe. But I have no interest in any of the public domain children's horror movies that are happening.
I didn't like it when it was kids content. I probably won't like it as adult content.
I'm very attached to Winnie the Pooh, so that's that's sacred to me, and so I don't find it amusing. I saw because Popeye's in the public domain, they're doing like a Popeye slasher
like horror movie,
and it's like I don't need to see Popeye the Sailor Man murdering teenagers. Like that doesn't do anything for me.
Yeah, why doesn't somebody make like a heroic version of these things or like a good guy version? I don't know.
Yeah, it goes in the public domain. Some great animator make an awesome tribute to the old animation or something.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Horror movies are easy to make.
I guess so. I mean, or just that
horror movies are easy to get funding for because they don't cost a lot and they always make profits, whether they're good or bad.
That's true. People like shitty horror. They don't like shitty drama.
Yeah, that's the thing. Horror is profitable no matter what. Like, you really have to screw the pooch to not make your money back on a horror movie.
Yeah, I mean, Tommy Wiseau made shitty drama, and that was pretty good.
Yeah, well, that's the thing where you go so shitty, you come back around and become art again.
All right, so let's go ahead and take a break, and then we'll come back and jump into this dissection of Nosferatu the Vampire.
A hideous chalk-skinned gargoyle seeks an end to his eternal loneliness by wooing, supernaturally, the wife of another man. I've never done this before. I stole that synopsis from Amazon Prime.
Oh.
But I loved a hideous chalk-skinned gargoyle. Like, I just like, God, I like that very much. I have to read that.
Yeah, I like to read synopsis on different websites, like usually, you know, Amazon or Google's, whatever. But I like the note on the IMDb one that says, an unusually contemplative version of Dracula in which the vampire bears a curse of not being able to get old and die. You're like, that's kind of in every version, but it is kind of an unusually contemplative version.
Yeah. It's you don't think Bela Lugosi or Christopher Lee are depressed as Dracula.
Absolutely. He seems really sad in this movie.
Yeah. It's a tragic Dracula, but it's like it's that way like the lonely narcissist sort of thing where like the person is still completely toxic and horrible, but human and sad. And you can feel it like a Homelander. You can feel empathy and sympathy for them while still most people understanding that that's the villain of the story.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of, I mean, not to get too like real life, but that's a thing that it takes a lot of years to learn growing up and gaining some wisdom in your life, is that you can feel sympathy for someone but also recognize they're a bad person.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, because some people 3 seasons of The Boys to figure that one out.
Yeah, jeez, yeah. Some people totally suck, but they're also in misery.
Yeah. It's often related.
Yeah. Well, they amplify one another.
Yeah. No one gets nicer because they're miserable. It doesn't. They're like, yeah, I just turn all my pain into
sweetness.
Sweetness. kindness.
Could you imagine just a total sweetie pie Dracula?
Yeah. Well, there's one where Leslie Nielsen plays Dracula.
Okay.
I bet he's pretty sweet.
Man.
So it's written and directed by Werner Herzog.
Mm-hmm.
I love Werner Herzog like so much. Like
I don't even know how many of his movies I've seen. Probably not that many.
It's him as a character and a philosopher more that I am aware of than him as a filmmaker. I haven't seen I haven't seen a ton of his movies, but I have.
Maybe we should put together a Werner Herzog Imperial phase.
I think this is the only
one that works.
Yeah, this is the only one that matches for us. And I don't know if I can watch like 5 movies with Klaus Kinski in them.
Yeah, that's true.
I think this might
we do a Klaus Kinski Imperial phase.
He's got like 200 credits. He's
so he's like Christopher Lee.
Yeah, he was like a big deal German actor.
Okay.
And like, I'll save the Kinski stuff for when we get to the performances.
So we already kind of talked about the story a little bit.
Yeah.
I feel like this hit all the major beats of the original Nosferatu, but also added a bunch more.
Yeah.
I mean, there might have been like onesie-twosie little things that kind of were missed. Mm-hmm. But as far as being easy to follow, this movie's very easy to follow. It flows really well. Even though there are like stop montages of beautiful, artful photography and video, like out in nature and stuff, but it doesn't stop the story.
Yeah, and like I love that there's when they're at the village as they get to before Borgo Pass, and it's the classic John, like, don't go to the castle, young man.
And he goes to the exact same bar where everyone else, they've all filmed.
Where Peter Cushing has gone to, and everyone else has gone there. Keanu Reeves has a tab open there. Everyone's been to that bar.
They have a wall of fame that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, they're like, a lot of Harkers and Renfields have come through here. And the Roma people, like, and cheers to representation. Real Roma people speaking their own language.
That's true. I thought that was pretty cool when I was watching it. I was like, wow, they didn't get like white people to play these people. Yeah. Awesome.
And they say something interesting where they say that the castle doesn't exist except for in men's dreams. Oh. There's only a ruin there. And then you see that ruined castle. Like, so I feel like the artful, the art movie photography or whatever is informing the dialogue, or vice versa. Like, it's very well put together.
Yeah, and I thought I noticed that too. And the time in which it happens in the movie, it's where in a lot of movies that have happened since, it's like the concept called like the theme stated, where somebody at about this point, 15% in maybe, says something really profound that's a commentary on the entire story.
Okay.
And this was that. This was the theme stated, and because this is like the evil truly lies in the hearts of men.
Yeah.
That's what this is. The whole thing is it's an illusion. It's not, but it is, it's a pretty cool bit of scripting, I think.
Yeah. And it's, Herzog said in the interview that they just, through the translator, told them what to say. They didn't write dialogue for them. They just told them the idea to express, and then they didn't translate it. Like, it doesn't have subtitles. The innkeeper is telling us what they're saying.
Yeah.
So he doesn't even know himself if they said what he asked them to say, if the idea was carried across. Mm-hmm. He just wanted to capture them authentically
talking about a thing
in their traditional garb and speaking their language. And it'd be just like if you were to go to an inn in Romania and the innkeeper's telling you what the Roma people are saying. You would have no idea if he was translating it accurately.
I actually hate that when you're watching a movie or something and somebody is saying something in a foreign language and there are subtitles and then somebody else translates it verbally. Mm-hmm. It's like, come on.
Yeah.
Don't put the subtitles if you're going to have somebody translate, because then it takes you out of the reality of you not speaking that person's language.
Yeah.
There's a certain barrier that's brought up when you can't communicate, and I think that actually lends a little bit of gravity to the scene.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it puts you more fully into his shoes, as he is a stranger in a strange land there. And one of the themes that Herzog talks about exploring is the relationship between Western Europe and Eastern Europe, and how people from Western Europe view the people in Eastern Europe, which is backwards and superstitious, and and all of these things. And there is some truth to that, because I've known a lot of Eastern European people, and they are steeped in old traditions in a way that the West, the West is not. But it's also incorrect and prejudice too.
Sure, it's definitely it's a negative stereotype. It's not a positive thought. Like, those yokels sure do like their superstition.
Yeah,
there's no way to think of that positively.
Yeah, because German people are very casually prejudiced against Romanians.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
They're Romanian. Like, it's that sort of thing. And so it's interesting to... Jonathan is very dismissive.
It's almost like that country rose up and thought they were a master race or something.
I mean, which one? Because they couldn't film in Romania when they did this movie because of the Ceausescu regime at the time.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, so they all get around to it. Everyone has kind of done that. It's our turn now at fascism. So.
Yeah. So getting to some of the writing and directing themes, like, I really liked how this movie, it felt like he was really focusing on obsession as a concept.
Yeah.
Like, we had, of course you have Renfield and the way he becomes obsessed with Dracula. You have Dracula himself, who's obsessed with Lucy, and then you end up having Lucy basically being like hyper focused or obsessed on basically saving her husband.
Yeah.
And killing Dracula. It's really kind of a movie about characters being extremely driven to pursue personal goals.
Yeah, that's really true. And Lucy, there's little kind of shades of like Ripley from Alien, in that Lucy is the woman that identifies the problem. Even like intuitively, she knows it before Dracula even comes. That Jonathan's in danger.
Yeah, there's a problem.
When he comes there, she's the one that does the research and figures out like what's going on. She's the one that soils his coffin so he can't return to it.
Oh yeah,
she's the one. She does everything proactively while no one listens to her, including like this version of Van Helsing, who is just like, I need to see more evidence before I jump to any conclusions.
Yeah, she kind of takes half of the mojo of Van Helsing from a traditional Dracula movie.
Yeah, he's usually the exposition guy, and in this he's just like a very straight ahead professor, evidence based. That's just nonsense. You're a hysterical woman, and he doesn't come around until she's dead.
Yeah, she's kind of the final girl, except she doesn't live.
Yeah, the final girl is Jonathan. That is
a big difference in this movie.
That's not in any other version that I know that I'm familiar with where Jonathan becomes a vampire at the end.
So when I saw that, Cultus, if you haven't watched it, basically at the end after Lucy basically tricks Dracula into dying, she had Jonathan trapped in a circle of salt down below, I think.
Communion wafers.
Okay, I couldn't tell exactly what that was.
It's little crackers.
Yeah, and so he's trapped. He can't go and help. And then she dies, Dracula dies, and then Jonathan commands the housekeeper to like clean the stuff up so he can get free. And then you see he has the rat fangs and the claws, and then it cuts to like him riding away on a horse. Yeah. And so Jonathan gets to be the monster continues, like in the birds fly off to the mainland.
The pestilence has spread.
In this case, it's Jonathan he's the new vampire that's going to do bad things.
And there's that analogy, or not analogy, but the commonality between the spreading of the plague and the spreading of vampirism that's established. And that's in the original Nosferatu, but it's really driven home here.
Oh, yeah, the rats are everywhere all the time.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, so many rats.
Yeah, it's not as many as Herzog wanted. The city of Delft objected to him releasing 10,000 rats.
Jesus. Where would you even get 10,000 rats?
Oh, rats breed pretty prodigiously. It just takes time to get 10,000 rats.
And food.
Yeah. There's lots of crazy, I don't know, this is maybe the right section to talk about this. The rats were a huge deal, both because the city did not want the rats. The farmer who was housing the rats, because they rented a barn, the person who was tasked with paying the farmer stiffed him and ran off with the money.
Oh, snap.
So when the production showed up with the truck to collect their rats, the farmer tried to block them with his tractor. The police got involved. The movie production shoved a police car into one of the canals.
Nice.
So they could escape. The city was very angry. Like, this was a very contentious production, like very combative with the local authorities. And then I wasn't really clear, but Herzog went and I think sprayed battery acid around the town hall in Delft, Netherlands.
Jeez.
To get revenge on them. And he said he'd spray it in a syringe like a skunk. And he was like, and I got my revenge. And it's like, wow, this is hardcore. He's an extreme dude.
I mean, that's before the age of security cameras everywhere.
Yeah. And hopefully it's past the statute of limitation on vandalizing a municipal building in the Netherlands.
Yeah, so I really liked all the rats and stuff. Did you have anything else about like directing and all that?
We can move on to the visuals, because that's what a lot of the stuff that I would talk about is.
Yeah, I think that this movie is it's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, it really
There's something
gorgeous.
special about the way he just embraces the actual like proper Gothic aesthetic. And also like with decaying castles, really dimly lit interiors, you have like shadowy, moody landscapes, like the beach shots with Lucy.
Oh yeah, and the willy-nilly tombstones.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It was just beautiful.
Yeah, and I just like when the score comes in real loud, and we just see bats hunting, and stuff like that, or just like the clouds rolling over the Carpathians, and like just that stuff. And I'm just like, ooh, this is like it's sumptuous, like it's a delectable movie. I just like
the mountain shots as he's traveling out to get to Dracula. It's so cool.
Yeah. So Herzog grew up most of his childhood in a very remote Bavarian village. Okay. They moved from Munich during the war. His mom moved him up into the mountains to get away from the bombings and things like that. And so he had a very isolated mountain upbringing. And he's someone that travels on foot a lot in the mountains. And it's one of those things where, like, that's his country. You know what I mean? So when we're up there in the mountains, he understands that landscape in a way that if you weren't from that region, I don't think you do.
Well, he was able to shoot it really beautifully. There were so many scenes where I was just like, wow, this is awesome.
Yeah, and just Jonathan walking on that trail alongside the waterfall and everything.
That was some Aragorn shit.
Yeah.
Like going through the mountains and all that.
Yeah. I love the he's like, coachman, I need to get to Borgo Pass. And he's, I don't have a coach. And he says, well, can I hire a horse? I'll pay double. And he goes, as you can see, I have no horses. And he's got like 6 horses.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, no one's helping you. And he's like, let him go on foot, carrying his saddlebags over his shoulder.
Yeah, he's just hardcore. He's like, anything for the real estate deal.
Yeah, for the commission. There's a fat commission in this for me.
Exactly.
I'll walk 10,000 miles for a commission.
So how much would they have to pay you to do a crazy ass cross country trek in order to close a deal with an eccentric weirdo that lives in the mountains?
Jonathan's very young. Usually, I don't think the actor doesn't look very young, but the character's young.
Keanu was the proper age.
Yeah, and you're up for that's the right age to be up for an adventure.
Like, you want to go to Transylvania? Shit, yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of that. It's a place you can go. That's exciting. I would love to go to Transylvania. I do think there's no coach. Like, that is a time when you call back to the office and be like, no one's driving me up this mountain. So I don't know. I don't know if in my 20s, if that roadblock would stop me or not. Also, it's a different century where you're just used to foot travel in a way that we're not.
Yeah, you're like, well, I got to go on a business trip. I'll be back in 2 months.
Yeah. Well, no, he is gone for months. I love he's writing Lucy letters that are just staying in his notebook because there's no way to mail them.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Yeah. So I was going to mention, I really like the expressionist stuff that Herzog uses here. Like, some of the scenes feel dreamlike and atmospheric because he's distorting the perspectives. Like, he's messing with the focus of the camera. Yeah. So different things are in focus at different times in the same scene. And also, just like as an homage to the original Nosferatu, the shadows are insane in this movie.
Yeah.
I love the shadows.
Yeah. So, cinematographer is Jörg Schmidt Reitvine. And he's a several times collaborator with Herzog. He's shot a lot of his movies. Mm-hmm. A lesser cinematographer wouldn't even attempt some of this stuff. Like, there's the sequence where the Count and Jonathan are going over the contract.
Yeah.
And there's like 1 candle, maybe 2 in the room. The screen is almost black, except for like half of both of their faces and some of the stuff on the table.
It's like they're hugging the light.
Yeah. And I was just thinking, like, this is the sort of thing where directors want to do this and cinematographers tell them, no, you can't make a movie like this.
It's too dark. You can't see
no one can see anything. I'm a photographer. I need light. And so I was just like, in this sort of admiration for both the director and the cinematographer of committing to just the candlelight. You see what you can see, because that's how it is in a castle. Like, castles are miserable unless you have, and you're like a medievalist, you know all of this stuff. Unless you have a full staff keeping it warm, dry, and furnished, a castle is a dank cave.
Yeah, it's literally just an artificial cave.
Yeah, and Dracula is on his own. He doesn't have any servants. That's
poor
consistent.
Dracula. This reminds me of the Last Unicorn.
he's the last vampire.
Yeah, he's got no staff.
Yeah, and he always, like a typical embarrassed nobleman, maintains the illusion of staff. The servants have all gone to bed.
Yes.
It's like, as far as we can tell, there's one Roma child that plays the violin.
Badly.
Oh, God, it's bad.
So bad.
I was joking, like, that was just something, like, there was a little boy and I had to grab the camera and capture him. It was beautiful in its dissonance. Like,
I was just like, oh my God, like this dissonant screech, it just pulls you, like you cannot look away. You're just like, ugh.
I love when Jonathan jumps out the window and like probably breaks both his legs, and the kid just plays on. Brutal. If he should have done womp womp.
I don't think he was skilled enough for that.
No, I don't. He knows the one song, and
he knows Ode to Joy very badly. He knows like half the notes of Ode to Joy.
Yeah. So we said cinematographer, makeup artist is Reiko Kruk.
I mean,
the Nosferatu makeup is
Dracula
iconic.
Looks amazing.
Yeah.
Like,
there is there's one time when the ear is coming off and you see his real ear and the fake ear is clearly on top of it, and I thought like that anyone else wouldn't, they would have like, oh, we have to redo this, but I think Herzog is like, that's the best take. What are you gonna do?
Just keep it.
Fuck the ear. It's like, that doesn't matter. Stay locked in.
In the modern day, you just CG it.
Yeah, you're like, just move the ear down and cover the.
You just hit an AI filter and it fixes it.
Yeah, it's true, but that's not the Herzog way. Even now, he wouldn't do it that way. It's iconic. I think so is the Max Schreck version of Nosferatu.
I bet you if you showed these two different Nosferatus, most people would have a hard time deciding which was which.
Interesting.
They're similar enough, and they're both extremely striking.
Yeah. It's clearly the same character.
Yeah.
Like when you see it, you're like, yeah,
that's Count Orlok.
That's Nosferatu. Like that's become his name. Basically, most people don't know Count Orlok. No one thinks this is Dracula.
No,
everyone says when you see a bald vampire with pointy ears and rat fangs, you go Nosferatu.
Exactly. Yeah, he's like an ugly elf.
Yeah. Yeah, and the long claws.
I love the fingers. The hands are great.
And costume design is by Gisela Storch. And what do you call the garment that he wears? Is it a gown? Is it a coat? Is it a frock?
I think it's a frock coat.
A frock coat. But it's just buttoned all the way up.
Yeah, it's just all the way. Yeah.
It looks like maybe it's velvet. It has a nice, like it plays with the light in really cool ways.
It's like trashed velvet.
Yeah. Well, he lives in a dank cave.
Yeah.
In a broken sarcophagus. Like, even his coffin is fucked. Like, it's not like he's got a rich mahogany casket. He has a stone sarcophagus that doesn't close right. It's broken.
You'd think he would work on fixing that shit. If you have Eternity,
he's in a flop state, like when you have depression.
Yeah.
This is a Dracula that's flopped hard for like a century. He's got a century of flop going on.
But I mean, think about it. He was willing to bet it all to move, and he has those riverboat men with with the barge with all the coffins and stuff.
That's intense stuff, and that's real. Like that's a real, and that's I'm sure that's not how they ship goods in the Carpathians these days.
Yeah,
but in the time period, that is how they did.
Yeah, it's just a raft, and it had a bunch of coffins on it. I bet you they were light, but. Yeah, that's crazy.
So Lisa and I were talking about when we were watching it. Could you do that? And it's like, be one of the three guys steering that raft.
I don't think they got actors. I think they got rivermen.
Yes. Oh, for sure. Yeah. That's what they do. Like, for generations, they know that river back and forth.
Yeah, it would be like hiring a river guide that's on a white water rafting.
Basically, I think... obviously, I couldn't do it now.
No.
I'm in my mid to late 40s, in the worst shape of my life. I could not pilot a wooden raft with a load in conjunction with two other guys through white water on a foreign river. I couldn't do that. If I'd grown up in the Roma village and have gone up and down this river a million times, yes. In my sleep, I could do it, but it's
people like us have different expertise.
Yeah.
Those guys could not find a specific book in Powell's.
They have no practical skills for an urban environment.
Yeah, exactly.
They know the river. They're rivermen. Like it's just. I hope there's still people like this is the 70s. Mm-hmm. Rivermen still existed in that region.
I'm sure that people still do that stuff. It might be with more modern equipment.
Yeah.
It's like if you watch any of those shows. I know you're not like a unscripted TV guy, but I like that kind of thing. Like if you watch like a gold mining show in the Yukon or anything like that, there are crazy asses that live way out in the middle of nowhere, and they do insane shit with underwhelming equipment.
Yeah. It's there's not much boat underneath it. It's just logs.
It's logs, yeah.
Because the water's not that deep.
Yeah,
really.
They can't really there's not enough room for a draft.
Yeah. Wild. There's no room for error in something like that because you're going down fast and hard.
And it'll break.
Yeah. Crazy. Yeah. Props to the Rivermen.
I like that scene. That scene was really beautiful.
Yeah. And then the last visual creative person is the production design by Henning von Gerke. I know the castle is a ruin that they're just filming in, but I love that castle. It looks like a place to go crazy in.
Yeah, it's really cool how it switches from the real ruin, and then there are spots where you can tell it's a set.
Yeah.
Like some of the doors look fake or whatever.
I don't know. I think that it's maybe not the same building, but I think those are actual. They filmed in now Czech Republic was Czechoslovakia then. Because they couldn't get permission to go into communist Romania.
Yeah.
But I think that's all real stuff. Like, I think that is a real crazy castle. Like, where the architecture doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
The hallways to nowhere, doors where they shouldn't be, like, aesthetically or ergonomically.
There was not a good architect working on this project.
No, I think, how when you build your first keep, as a petty lord, right?
Add-ons and add-ons.
You add on as you acquire more lands, you get the favor of the person above you in station. They grant you more lands. Now you have more incomes. Let's add another wing on the castle, and
it just becomes crazy castle.
And then you become impoverished, and the castle falls into disrepair. And next, you're sleeping in a broken sarcophagus in the basement.
Yeah, I mean, we saw that in Bram Stoker's Dracula when, how he rose to feudal power and then he became kind of a pauper lord.
Yeah, it's shown to us very well, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that castle was really cool. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the soundtrack.
Oh, please.
This music was very epic. It was so dynamic. It went from extremely suspenseful and like it kind of gave you feelings of dread all the way until it's just absolutely epic and soaring.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Popol Vuh is the name of the group. It's a German prog krautrock band. I'm going to put them with Tangerine Dream in that sort of like, if I see original music by Popol Vuh going forward, fuck yeah. Like, that rocks. This band is awesome. Like,
the music was insane.
It feels like
it's like Junkie XL level.
I think I mean, it is. There's a little bit of synth, but it's a lot of acoustic stuff. It is sort of. Krautrock is sort of the forerunner to the stuff that Junkie XL does. Sure.
Proggy.
Yeah. And it also goes into psychedelic. There's a lot of sitar in it. It goes into sort of proto-neo-folk, kind of. Like it made me think of like when a black metal guy has an acoustic side project thing. This is the sort of music a lot of times they do.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Like, yeah.
Atmospheric and then like cool guitar runs on acoustic guitar. And then, there's like 3 tracks with sitars in them, and I'm a sucker for like 60s psychedelia and stuff.
Yeah, like Led Zeppelin kind of brought that into the fore.
The heavy Middle Eastern vibes.
Yeah.
Like, it's got the heavy Middle Eastern vibes. It's got the Gothic vibes. It's got the prog vibes.
Well, and just from a historical perspective, all of that stuff's it's really cool that they're incorporating that, because all of that area was basically part of Byzantium after the Roman Empire broke into 2 parts, and there was Constantine in the east, and so it was all of that was all appropriate, right? Because it was all in that same Byzantium empire. So very cool.
Romanian people will always tell you they're Latin, right? Like,
sure,
we're hot-blooded with Latin blood.
I've never met a Romanian, so I don't know.
Oh yeah. They're very Rome. It comes from Rome.
Yeah, they're Roman.
Yeah, like, and that Roman heritage is a big deal to Romanian people.
I mean, they're right.
Yeah,
if you study history.
And the Roma people, which I know the name sounds similar, they come from India originally.
Yeah.
So the sitar and things like that are appropriate to them. Like that goes into their heritage. So the music works and it rules. I listened to this album
they use those really interesting like quarter tones and stuff. I think it's pretty neat how they brought that in. And even if you weren't listening for the music, like obviously when we're watching a movie for this podcast, we're looking for cinematography, we're listening for music. It kind of poisons the experience.
Yeah.
But not really, because I feel like even if you forget to listen for the music, it comes at you when it's supposed to.
Yeah,
it's chill when it needs to be chill. It's silent sometimes, and then other times it's just cranked.
Yeah, and there's like there's the kind of shots of the Demeter, like these helicopter shots of it, and the score comes in real hard and right up front and kind of hits you in the grill as you see this ghost ship just cruising with the captain tied to the wheel, and just like the music, like those sort of minor chords are hitting really hard, and they're doing like this, like a shh on the hi-hat or the cymbal, and it's like there's so much tension in it, and then it just sort of the music gets quiet as the boat drifts into the canal in the city. And then the music drops completely out to where you can hear branches breaking as the ship just kind of comes up to the edge of the canal and breaks the branches off the tree that overhangs the canal.
Yeah.
And like the music drops out at just the right time for you to hear that sort of sickening bone break sound that a branch makes when it breaks. And so that's the sound engineer is Harold Murray. And the score and the sound design are playing beautifully with each other.
Yeah, the way that they set all of that up and they engineered it to be when to use the music, when to cut the music.
Yeah.
It was really well done. This movie really you can tell that just a ridiculous amount of thought and effort went into every scene.
Yeah. And it's Herzog is so interesting because he's very guerrilla, very get it done. He teaches a guerrilla filmmaking class, and he says, and the only thing I teach the students is the forging of documents and picking locks. and it's like, and everything else. He says, you have a natural right to make film. If you have to steal a camera, you have a natural right to the camera. Because he stole his first camera from his film school and then stopped going to school. Just checked the camera out and
never came back.
Yeah, and that's how he thinks you do it. You know, you just get out there and start making movies, and whatever it takes. And it's fascinating, someone that works that way, because. The people in the interview I was listening to, they talk about like character analysis, and he goes, that is anathema to me. I don't do this at all. I just write. I don't analyze the characters or the motivations. I just write the story. And it's like, it still works. Like, you obviously intuitively understand this stuff if you don't, even if you don't think about it.
Yeah, that's one of the things that a lot of people, it's like you can go to school and you can learn the nuts and bolts of film writing or of novel writing or whatever.
And suck at it.
But also there are just some people intuitively understand storytelling just because it's, the ancient human communication in a dramatic way. And you don't need to know about story elements and rising action and falling action and all these things if you just kind of intuit storytelling, if you're raised with it.
You're a natural storyteller.
Yeah. And he very clearly is a natural storyteller. That's like some authors are, there's plotters who create everything. They create a little sandbox and then they write a story. And then there's the people who just go.
Yeah.
And it ends up how it is.
Gardeners and architects.
Yeah. And I think he's very clearly, he's a gardener. He's just going.
Yeah. Just while the muse gets a hold of you and you run with it.
Or plotters and pantsers, as it's called, for not by the seat of your pants.
Oh, okay.
Novel writing, yeah. So he's a pantser and I'm a plotter.
Yeah.
It is what it is, you know?
Yeah. Well, it's just, it's where your aptitude lies and stuff. One person, there's no right way, and one person that's good at one can't naturally do the other.
Yeah, and when you're teaching a person something, especially if you're an artist, like if I was trying to teach someone how to play music or whatever, I can show them some of the things that I do, but ultimately they have to figure out how they're going to do it.
Yeah.
And you just sort of have to figure out your own style. The same thing goes with martial arts. Like Bruce Lee didn't teach people how to be him. He taught them ways to become themselves, a better version. So,
like he trains someone like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. It's a completely different set of tools. Like when the guy's 7 feet tall. Like
understand the fundamentals, but after that, you're creating your own toolkit.
Yeah, for sure.
And I really thought Herzog did a great job with the way that he kind of naturalistically told this story. Even though it was an homage, it didn't feel like a rehash.
No. Yeah, I didn't think so. I feel like I didn't feel like I'm watching the same movie. And I assume, or I hope, that in a few weeks when Robert Eggers' Nosferatu comes out, I'm not going to feel like that's the same movie either.
Yeah, I can't wait to see that. That's going to be great.
Yeah, it's when you get back from your Christmas holiday, we'll definitely go see that. For sure.
So you want to talk about the performances?
Yeah.
Klaus Kinski.
Do we say the sort of stuff? He sexually abused his daughter.
Okay, so he's garbage human.
He's a garbage human. It's really weird when I saw this movie screening at the Hollywood Theater in Portland, like a year, maybe 2 years ago, and you could tell people talk about him like he's a weird guy. Like they're like, and Klaus Kinski, everyone knows about him. I didn't know. I didn't know it was as bad as it was. I thought he was just an eccentric weirdo, and it's another level.
No, he's a predator.
He was a horrible person, and that's moving on. Isabella Adjani,
as Lucy Harker,
beautiful, so good.
Yeah, I mean she is beautiful, and her performance is amazing.
Yeah, Dracula says the thing about she has a lovely throat. It's true. She has a long swan neck, and it is beautiful.
It kind of struck me that she is probably the most beautiful of the Mina roles that I've seen, I think.
I mean, I don't know.
Mrs. Harker.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, you're comparing apples to oranges. Yeah. But, I mean, she does it very well. Yeah. And you understand why Dracula was immediately enchanted.
Enchanted with her. She is enchanting.
Yeah.
And she's... we haven't mentioned this. No one speaks English as a first language in this whole cast. It's all... She's French. Most of the cast is German or Dutch. I think there's maybe one other French. Renfield is a French actor also. But in general, no one is speaking English as their first language. They filmed all the dialogue scenes in German and English. So I was paying attention to that because it seemed like, that's a lot. And there's probably the two versions are very different. But there's a lot of voiceover. There's not a ton of dialogue in the movie.
Yeah, this is not a heavy dialogue movie.
So there's only like less than a minute time difference between the German and English version. So I think mostly it's the same film.
Yeah.
But they just filmed both dialogues, basically.
I think she's really good when she's playing like the concerned Mrs. Harker, and then when she's kind of made the turn and she's all pale and vampiric, she's like horrifying and beautiful, and it's like it's really a great role. The physical acting is really good. There was one part of her performance that I literally laughed out loud.
Oh yeah.
When Jonathan Harker comes back and the police bring him or whatever, and
he seems to belong to this house,
and she goes up and she's like, Jonathan, he pushes her, who is this woman? And she goes, and she just faints. I laughed because it wasn't like, like someone like leans back dramatically. She just flopped. Yeah. And I was just like, dang.
Yeah. And it's a proper theatrical Victorian faint.
Yeah, it was so funny.
When someone faints, my wife is hypoglycemic and has passed out a few times while we're just out in public. It's a straight down drop. It's a crumple. It's not a
Yeah.
It's a just all the whatever that it's holding the person up goes out of them and they go straight down. They don't fall backwards, in my experience.
Yeah, it seems like people sort of ragdoll. They don't gently flop.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. Another thing I noted about her performance, and it struck me as how stoic she is.
Yeah.
And she's really strong in this movie.
She is, and she makes up her mind. And she is not just trying to save her husband, but save the whole town.
Yeah.
And the town has gone full fuck it.
Almost everyone's dead.
Yeah. And people are just like, this is our last supper. We're eating with animals in the street.
Yeah, they're going nuts.
They're like, everyone's going to die. There's nothing we can do. No one knows why this is happening. And she's like, pleading with them, like she's going around and everyone's just ignoring her basically, and it's heartbreaking. Like it's very tragic and proper gothic, this sort of like just doomed melancholia is proper gothic horror to me.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy, and I really enjoyed her performance in it.
Yeah.
So how about Bruno Ganz as Jonathan Harker?
He seems legit terrified of Klaus Kinski. That's the impression I have, that when they're alone together in the castle, he seems legitimately afraid for his life.
Yeah.
And I think that's valid, knowing the things I know, like when they were filming Fitzcarraldo in Peru, Kinski got out a Winchester rifle and shot at one of the other tents in the crew camp and hit someone, shot their finger off.
Wow.
He was an unhinged madman, and I think that's real fear. I don't think it's acting. I think Bruno Ganz is afraid for what this guy might do to him. And it makes for a great movie, but very bad ethics. I feel like someone should be like, he shouldn't be as scared as I think he really is in these scenes.
Yeah, he really was portraying extreme fear, and desperation at times.
He seems like a real hostage.
Yes.
Like, it doesn't seem fake.
I thought the Harker character was really good. I especially loved the outro where he becomes the vampire. I thought that was amazing.
It's a good twist when he says to the maid, he's like, "There's dust everywhere. Sweep this up." And then he runs off, like gets his coat, and I'm like, I'm out of here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and he throws Van Helsing under the bus because he says he's murdered Count Dracula, and the mayor's like, "Did you do that, sir?" He's holding the bloody stake in his hand.
I did, but for very good reason.
Yeah, I had reasons. Please let me explain.
He tells the little old man, "Arrest this man."
It's like, there's no one in the jail. Whatever I could have taken. Yeah, that whole thing is comical.
Yeah, that was a good scene.
Yeah. So Bruno Ganz, I think he is. It's a very different take on Jonathan Harker, but I like it a lot.
Yeah, I thought it was fun. He never was trying to be a hero in this role, and I liked that.
He's both, like, to compare it to the Murnau film, he's not ever as devil may care as that version of the character was.
That's true.
Who was just like thought everything was a lark until it was too late to think back on it or whatever. This guy is more stoic the whole time, but he still does have a descent. And I think the stuff where he's playing the amnesia is proper tragic. Like that when he says to Mina, he goes, or to Lucy.
I hate that they changed the name.
It's so weird. It's just a weird choice. And he says, "Milady, how did we come to know each other?" I cried. Like,
oh man,
because that's fucking like, that's something usually happens when people are much older, right?
Yes,
when your partner gets dementia and people have to deal with that. But that's such a hard thing, like, to have your partner not know you.
I know. Oh, you know, that's so harsh.
Yeah, and so I was like, oof, that fucking hurts. And then he turns into a dirty bloodsucker at the end of it. And not even with the cool kind. He's got the rat fangs.
I know. No, that is the cool kind.
He's Clan Nosferatu, and he's going to be like a sewer monster. He's not going to be a dashing vampire.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I do really like that portrayal. I thought that version of Harker is really good, and I enjoy watching these movies that are iterations on the same base content, because I really love seeing the artistic differences and the choices that people make, the directors, the writers, and the actors. Because we're so familiar with the material, I don't find it to be bland or droll to do it again.
It's become Shakespeare, it's become modern mythology, it has become a campfire story. It's not
that time when the real estate agent brought a monster home.
Like, it has become a modern myth. I mean, modern, it was from the previous century, or the one before it. Actually,
it was
19th century. But it's you cross over to sometimes that something has been reiterated on so many times that the iteration is what's making it interesting at that point.
Yeah, it's like when a cover song is really enjoyable on its own.
Yeah, for sure.
So we got Roland Topor as Renfield.
Hate it. I hate it. I can't stand that laugh. Was driving me nuts.
I thought... So, I didn't hate it. I wasn't as much as you, but I was like, damn, now I understand where they got the inspiration for Jar Jar Binks.
Yeah. So
he's like trying to be funny.
I guess the laugh, Topor had that maniacal laugh. That he brought that to it, and it's why he got cast.
Okay. The Murnau version of Renfield is better.
Yes, I agree. So that's last episode, we said every Renfield is fun. I didn't find this one fun.
I didn't hate him, but he definitely not my favorite Renfield.
Yeah. I like some of the physical aspects of his performance.
Yeah, he had a lot of energy. He
pickpockets the prison guard. I like how he played it, but the laugh was just, sometimes something just rubs you the wrong way, and that laugh was
like
rubbing
that
me.
Fucking violin in this movie.
I see. Yeah, that's the discordant violin I take as mood, and the laugh I take as annoying.
Yeah, I'm the opposite.
You're the opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Walter Ladengast as Dr. Abraham Van Helsing.
Yeah, he's the last one I have on my list.
It's a very different take on Van Helsing. Not my favorite take, but it is for the story that...
It's no Hugh Jackman.
Yeah. Do I like Hugh Jackman's Van Helsing more than this one?
I do.
No, I don't.
I do. We should do that movie.
I suggested it. You didn't want to do it.
Okay, I turned the corner.
You come back around. Okay. Well, then we'll get to that one. Because I haven't seen it since it came out, and I might be able to have a better attitude about it now. I like the opening black and white part. I'll say that. I think that rules.
I like Hugh Jackman.
Yeah. He's a lot of fun. This Van Helsing is... he's more of just a doctor, right?
Yeah.
You can tell he's a doctor because of the way he disregards a woman's concerns.
Exactly. And his kind of smug superiority, every doctor.
Yeah.
And if you're a doctor out there, cultist, we're not sorry. Be nicer. Listen to women.
Listen to women. Listen to black women, especially. Maternal, hemorrhaging. My wife works in the OBGYN department. This shit's out of control.
You gotta listen.
Listen to women. Women's pain is real. Oh my God. So yes, he is portraying a real sort of person that...
Yeah, it's a stereotype.
That doesn't listen until it's too late, and then goes... after the vampire's already dead, and puts a stake through his heart.
Yeah. He solves the problem that was already solved.
Yeah. He's like, I've got to put an end to this. She already did it. The woman that you should have listened to through the whole movie
sacrificed herself to end the problem.
Yeah.
If you'd listened, she would still be alive or undead.
Yeah. The time to put a stake through his heart is when he's sleeping in his broken coffin, not when he's already dead on the ground.
Yeah.
Bad job, Van Helsing, but a good performance of a certain kind of terrible doctor.
Yeah, Ladegast did a good job.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's what they were going for, he did it.
Yeah. Should we talk about the thousands of rats?
Oh, yeah. I guess they're in the cast.
They are in the cast. Rats do really well. So the rats were treated very badly. That was another thing that also... this was the first strike against the movie in my...
animal cruelty.
There was no PETA in 1979.
In Germany or in the Czech Republic?
So most of the rat scenes are in Delft, Netherlands.
Okay.
Because they couldn't get permission to film in Wismar or in Transylvania. So that's why Czech Republic is Transylvania and Netherlands is Germany.
Okay.
They dyed the rats black because they were white rats.
Yeah.
A lot of the rats didn't survive the dyeing process. And the rats that did survive all licked off all the dye.
Yeah, they weren't black rats.
They're white rats by the end of the movie, no matter what. And so the whole torturing the animals and dyeing them was pointless.
Yeah.
But the rats are... real rats are better than CGI rats. I'm gonna just say that. And rats do interesting stuff. Like if you're watching the rats, there's a whole rat movie.
There's a lot of rat shit that goes on. There's some sleeping rats, and there's other rats nearby, kind of wrestling.
Yeah, rats that are checking things out. They stand up on their hind legs and look around. So rats feel for you, and great performances from all of the thousands of rats.
Yeah, I mean, this is is real. Right after Ratatouille, this is a rat movie.
This is a top 10 rattiest movie around. Ratatouille, Nosferatu. What's the one with Crispin Glover? Wilfred.
I mean, the new Nosferatu that's about to come out supposedly had a scene with 10,000 rats in it or something. So.
Rats
I want to see that.
Rats are a big part of it. That's one of the things in the 31 Dracula. Renfield sees all the rats, right?
Yeah.
Like, you just have him looking out the window and go, rats, thousands and thousands of rats. Turn the camera off the guy and show me the rats. No, there's no rats.
No, there's not a single rat.
There's a weird cricket in a mini coffin for some reason, but there's not a rat.
Kind of like that mini coffin thing. Anyway.
Yeah.
So what was your personal highlight?
My personal highlight is Isabella Adjani as Lucy Harker when she dunks on Dracula.
Okay.
He comes into her room, right? Like she's doing the Victorian lady brushing her hair in the mirror. The door opens. You don't see him. You just see the Nosferatu shadow. The shadow comes in on the wall. He creeps up behind her.
Yeah.
And then he's there in the room, and they have a little tete-a-tete with each other. And she just swerves the guy. Like he's basically he's gonna make his "I have crossed oceans of time for you" Gary Oldman speech to her.
Oh yeah.
And she's like, hard pass. Don't want it. Not interested.
Later, creepo.
Eddie just like sulks back out of the room. Like, and she just like blocked him so like wonderfully. Like, and she goes, Jonathan is ruined since meeting you. And he goes, he won't die. Yeah. And it's like, Eddie, he seems so confident, like, I've got everything I want, and now I'm just going to collect my prize. And the prize is like, fuck off, Baldy. Yeah. And he just has to sulk back out of the room. And I just thought it was just played beautifully.
Yes.
By both of them. Kinski is great in this scene too. Like, because he's proper deflated. Like, oh, no one loves me. I'm just an awful worm. Loved it. Beautiful. What's your personal highlight?
So I did have a whole thing about Klaus Kinski's performance as Dracula, but I'm going to skip that and go to my plan B.
Okay.
And it is actually the last like 10 minutes of the movie. The performance the performance by Mrs. Harker, Lucy Harker, and
Isabella Adjani,
the tricking Dracula in, and I absolutely love where he bites her, and he's slurping away, and then it cuts to a bat in flight with choir music, and I was like, is this cool? Yes, it's fucking amazing.
Rules.
This is perfect. This is amazing. Because Dracula is soaring. That is his moment. He's drinking from the woman that
he's won.
Yes, he crossed the world. And I love that the bat, the choir music, and then when it returns and he's getting up and he's moving away, and then Mina draws him in back. And she knows what time it is. She's keeping track of it.
Yeah.
And then they both die. And then, of course, there's the hijinks with Van Helsing, whatever, and the discussion with the people. But then Harker in the chair, and then the maid cleans up, and then he's gone, and you see him, and you get that perfect outro. Everything from when Mina is bit all the way to when Jonathan's on a horse riding away. I was in it. I was like, this is the shit.
It is a really good climax. And a lot of he's really creepy in that, like, he's gropey. And stuff.
He is. He's kind of touchy-feely.
Like, he pulls her skirt up, and he's copping a feel, and he's really, like, he's savoring his moment, right? And then he's like, well, I gotta go. The sun's coming up, and like you said, she brings him back in, and he seems drunk, right? Like he's blood drunk, and just
he's like, why not?
Sure, a little bit more. There's more time, you know, and
I'll
it's like,
fine.
It's excellent. That's right up there. That's another one of the
best. It's a really good moment in the movie. So, what worked for you?
We talked about the cinematography already. The movie is beautiful. It's sumptuous. It's sensuous. It's Jörg Schmidt, Reitwein, and Herzog are they're one of those director and cinematographer like perfect combos. Would they go together? Like, you know, peanut butter and chocolate.
Yeah.
It's great. Herzog is, I think he's known mostly as a documentarian more than a fictional filmmaker. And that documentarian's eye gives everything a voyeuristic quality.
Yeah.
Every scene you're peering in on, you're looking up at, you are looking in through broken windows and in dark rooms, and you're in places you shouldn't be there. And it just infuses it with this sort of a very visceral reality. Even though it is a highly stylized, unreal movie, it feels grounded from a real place, in the real world, in real settings, with real human people.
Oh, yeah.
And then all the performances that we've already mentioned, but Kinski and Adjani in particular give just really strong performances in this movie.
Yeah, they're really good.
What about you? What worked for you?
The lighting in the shadows, that was right up there. You can't really call that for a personal highlight because it's not a moment, but
I like how fucking dark it was.
Yeah. But like some of the scenes are super bright, and some of them are super dark, and there are moments where the shadows are just cast perfectly. The lighting must have taken forever to set up.
Yeah.
And there's like they're very intentional about making sure Dracula's shadow is always huge.
Yeah. Bigger than
him always. And I love that. Like in specific, so there was a scene when he gets off the ship, and I love the whole the Demeter thing. I love the ships, that whole thing. It wasn't quite as good as the Murnau ship sequence, but it was good. But anyway, he's getting off and he's carrying a coffin and he's going to the church, you know, same idea as before. And he kind of, he goes toward the church, and then a light shines a big shadow of him across the front of the church, and then he goes in, and then he sees a cross, and he like trips away from it.
Yeah, I love how he winces at the cross.
Yeah,
when he goes by.
And then he's backlit by a spotlight inexplicably in the church.
Yeah.
So his shadow is right on the wall, and I was just like, wow, the physical acting in this is great, but more importantly, the way they set up the lights in advance for him to go and play with was genius.
There's another one where he's sort of capering through the town square. And he's, like you said, you called him an elf earlier, and it's very elf-like. He's sort of like feeling himself, you know, like he's like, I'm fucking doing it. I got out of that old castle. I've got a new place. I got a new girl.
It's like when Gary Oldman becomes fancy Dracula.
Yeah. And he takes a little moment to camper through the town square and celebrate all the death and destruction that he's brought with him.
He's like, hashtag winning, tiger blood.
Yeah, Dracula's back in business, baby. I got my mojo back.
Exactly. And then the last thing on my what works for me was rats.
Oh, yeah.
I love the rats. They were dope.
Real rats? Really?
I didn't anticipate that we would talk about the rats this much before this part, but that was right in my notes. It's the rats, creepy as fuck, and I love them. They were everywhere. It was awesome.
Yeah. With the customs guy opens the coffin, and they're just like, it's just dirt and rats, I guess. And like the rat bites him.
No big deal, just the plague.
I know. He's good as dead. It's the 19th century or whatever, 18th century. Yeah.
All right. So what didn't work for you?
You know, I've talked about both of these things, but previously the inhumane treatment of animals has bothered me about this movie. And then the stuff I learned about Kinski bothered me, and it colors my whole experience watching it. Like,
I'm glad I watched it not knowing.
Yeah, I am too. And that's why I didn't tell you ahead of time. Like, when I got there, I was like, David's not going to want to know this. But we have to talk about it.
Because I would just hate it.
Yeah, and this is a movie I would have told you before I love this movie. Do I still love this movie? I kind of do still love this movie. And like, and it's still beautiful. Like, it's still a great film, but it is harmed by background information that I know, not by things that are on the screen, things that I know in my head. But that stuff is real, and it influences how I see the film when I watch it.
All right.
What about you? What didn't work for you?
So, I mean, now that I know that stuff, that doesn't work for me. But, I mean, when I was thinking about this after watching it, I was thinking, geez, this was good. What didn't work? I think that this is an art film.
Yes.
And I say that as a positive and a negative. I put it in the what didn't work because I tend not to like art films. Yeah. I liked this one. I don't think a lot of people like art films.
Yeah.
It's not for general consumption. It's absolutely stunning in appearance.
Yeah.
And the acting by the two leads is off the hook. It's so good. But I understand why somebody might be bored with this if they're watching and they're like, more bats flying, more choir music, another picture of the mountains, more clouds.
Yeah.
Okay, you got me there, but I was loving all of that.
Yeah.
So I think this is like a rarefied taste. Like this is like drinking a very fine craft brew, and if you don't have a palate for it, like, it's not for you.
This tastes like pine needles.
Exactly.
Yeah, that sort of
so
thing.
It's not palatable for every person.
Yeah.
But it was for you and me.
And it, we didn't mention this earlier, and I don't know when the right time to say it is. So this movie comes in 1979. Mm-hmm. This is a hugely aesthetically influential movie on the goth movement.
Yeah.
Because this movie comes out right as that is really taking off. You know, punk is kind of the first wave is ending and the post-punk thing is happening. And this movie is like part of that, even though Herzog's not a part of that.
With the romantic goth look, like the style, the way Mina dresses, and all of the, or Lucy, I mean, and the various people, like having that kind of throwback Renaissance vibe. It's definitely timely. It's weird because like yesterday or the day before, I just watched a documentary on the history of the goth movement on YouTube. And this right there, late 70s, early 80s, when it was evolving from punk into its own thing, and you had people dressing, putting on corsets and doing these things. Like, this is right there. It's all part of it.
Yeah. So you just imagine you're like Dave Vanian and Susie Sue saw this opening weekend. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, this movie is such a big part of that scene, in my humble opinion.
I mean, I think it was part of a zeitgeist that was happening, and it may not have been the first stone in the avalanche or in the rock slide, but it was part of it, and it accelerated that whole thing by bringing it into the pop culture. So what do you got for your final thoughts and rating?
So this I have written down here 3 stars. As we've been talking about it, I'm inclined to give it back that 4th star that I think I took away from it, as just sort of bringing my own personal feelings to it.
Yeah.
But I think anything that I said about Murnau's Nosferatu also applies to this. I think if you're a fan of horror cinema, vampire movies, cinema broadly, German cinema, any of these things,
expressionist cinema,
this is one of the important movies that you should see.
Absolutely.
So I think I'm back up at a 4.
Okay.
And I'm just like, I'm on the fence. It's a 3.5, and our discussion has pushed me off the fence onto the 4 side.
So I think if you take the movie in isolation and you don't know who Klaus Kinski is, aside from an actor that played Dracula, this is an easy 4 all day, every day. You wouldn't even think about it.
Right.
I mean...
And he is great.
Yeah,
like,
and
there's
that's
no
the
getting
problem.
around it. He's a great actor, and he's great in this movie. It's one of his main, like, one of his iconic roles.
So I gave it a 4, taking it, I mean, in ignorance, not knowing, and I stay with that because I do think that this movie stands alone. I would say this is nearly a perfect vampire movie.
Oh yeah.
But it is not a perfect movie for all people that I would say unqualified. Everyone, you gotta see it. It should. Yeah. This is required watching if you like movies at all. I think if you're into horror, if you're a goth, if you're an alternative kid or whatever, you gotta see this movie. It's so fucking cool.
Did you see the poster? That classic illustrated poster?
I don't think so.
Okay. It looks. I thought, is this an early Tim Bradstreet? Because it has that vibe of the vampire role playing game. But it's David Palladini, who was an Italian artist and did a lot of posters and sort of Art Nouveau style.
Nice.
But the aesthetic of the poster of this movie has spawned a whole aesthetic to itself.
Yeah, it's very clear that this movie was heavily influential on what became the 90s goth movement. The kids of the 80s loved this movie and spawned 90s goth.
Yeah, I knew the iconic images of this movie way before I ever saw it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So it got a 7.4 on IMDb. It got a 94 on Rotten Tomatoes and a 79 on Metacritic. So I think 4 is about where it should be.
We're in the consensus. We're in the zone.
It's. I was really happy with this movie. I thought it was extremely good, but I'm not sure if it's. I'm not sure if it's one of those ones that will probably be hailed as one of the greatest of all time.
Yeah.
But I think if you're a vampire nerd, you got to see this movie.
It's one of the most important vampire movies, for sure.
It's definitely. We should do like a ranking of the greatest vampire movies of all time. That would be pretty important. There's still a bunch we haven't seen.
Yeah.
I mean, so I guess we're gonna have to hold off on that
until we've seen more vampire movies.
Yeah. We could come up with some personal rankings that my own personal current rankings, and then as new movies enter, see if things bump.
See how they adjust.
See they bump the slots. That could be fun.
We've done a bunch of Draculas just through this podcast, and we could rank the various Draculas already.
I mean, but do you only do Dracula, or do you add things like Lost Boys, Interview with the Vampire, other fun vampire movies?
Well, I mean that. If we go we could go Dracula. There's enough Draculas to do a top
I'd want
10.
to see a few more if we're going to do more. Do Dracula.
Christopher Lee did 1 billion of them.
That's absolutely true.
He did a lot of Dracula. Let's take a break and do the callback. Before we delve into the Vault of Darkness, we ask that all initiates of the cult follow us on your favorite social media platforms at Nightshade Cult.
If you've enjoyed this content, help us grow the cult by sharing it with like-minded people and leave us a review wherever you listen.
Do you have any dark tidings before we pull out our stuff from the vault?
No, not really.
No, I didn't either. What do you got? What are you pulling out?
All right, so I love vampire stuff, but I was trying to think of a way to make it fresh.
You've recommended a lot of vampire things. You got to be running low.
No, I'm just trying to keep it fresh. So I got a half a dozen more novels I could read, role-playing games, whatever. But I'm going to go with something you can stream right now.
Okay.
So at first you may not think this is about vampires, but it actually is. The anime Demon Slayer. I don't know if you're familiar. It is on Netflix.
I'm aware of it. There's a guy with a pig head, right?
Yeah, that's one of his friends. One of the main character's friends who wears a mask. It's not a piece.
He doesn't have a pig head.
Yeah, he's actually a very handsome boy. He wears that to be more fierce.
Okay.
But so it's an anime that's called Demon Slayer, and it has 5 seasons. They're all available on Netflix, and you can watch them in subs or dubs. And it is so a youth begins a quest to fight demons and save his sister after he finds his family slaughtered and his sister turned into a demon.
Wow.
Now, demons in this world drink human blood.
Okay.
They can also eat human flesh, but the sun also kills them, destroys them if they're out in the sun.
Okay.
And they have all the typical vampire, like strength, speed, regeneration. Like you cut them, their arm grows back, the whole deal.
Yeah.
And they also have cool magical abilities called demon arts.
Okay.
This is straight up vampire shit.
Okay.
And so
So it's vampire hunter, not demon hunter.
Basically. Basically he comes, they're like a rural family, and he's the oldest brother, and he comes home after delivering some wood to a market nearby. Like they make charcoal, like they had made charcoal in their furnace, and he was selling it at the market and coming home, and he found that a demon had happened across their cottage in the woods and like killed his whole family and turned his sister into a demon.
Okay.
And he's like freaking out, and he decides to try to save his sister. He puts a piece of bamboo in her mouth so she can't bite.
Okay,
and
that's the imagery I've seen. Yeah,
and puts her in a wooden box, or at first it's a basket, a wicker basket, and puts her on a backpack and carries her. And he eventually meets up with a demon slayer who finds him, and they have mystical abilities that they train each other in, like the demon slayers. And he senses the demon, and he's like, "Oh, wow, you're a good guy, blah blah blah. Here, I'm going to take you to my sensei, who's going to teach you what to do and take care of your sister, because she's never killed a person, so that
she's not fully
she hasn't fully been corrupted or whatever."
This is very vampire.
Yeah. And he does all the anime trope stuff. Like he trains under a sensei. He learns crazy martial arts stuff and these forms that they do with their swords that resemble fighting game moves, sort of. You know how they call that shit out. He's like, water breathing form 8. Yeah. Crazy shit with the sword. And there's this whole organization, like super hyper elite group of demon slayers, and he joins and becomes one. And then there's like leaders, like a high council, and he meets them and trains under them. And there's 5 seasons of this shit, and it's really good,
Naruto-esque, right? Like,
except for that it's dark and sad boy. Like people die, and it's not. I mean, okay, it's an anime, so sometimes there's a funny thing.
Yeah,
but ultimately speaking, Demon Slayer is a pretty dark title. It's considered of modern animes to be one of the best ones as far as like it's got a nice long continuity. It's not just like one season and done or whatever, and it never drops off. It just stays good.
Interesting.
So if you're into like easy, 20 to 24 minute episodes and good storytelling, the art is excellent. It's very high budget. Yeah. This is not lo-fi at all. This is like big deal. And it's based on a very famous manga, of course, and it's continuing. So check out Demon Slayer on Netflix or Crunchyroll or wherever else.
And there's at least one movie. Is there more than one?
Oh, I think like most animes that get successful,
there's kind of a movie.
They do the the between the season movies where they put it all back in the. Put all the toys back in the box and all of that. And we're actually waiting on one for an anime called Solo Leveling that is between seasons, and there's going to be a big release. Solo Leveling is like a weird sci-fi thing where like rifts to other worlds start opening in our world, and some people start developing superpowers so they can fight against the monsters that come through the rifts. Anyway, check out Solo Leveling after you check out Demon Slayer. Also very good.
And I'd say I'm very aware of Demon Slayer in the sort of the anime nerd weeb community.
It's a very high profile anime. This is not like it's on Netflix.
I see many Honda Civics with the characters of this anime peeping out from the back window.
Absolutely. And the Hanafuda card earrings he wears that have like the beautiful like Japanese sunset thing with the design. It's the classic Japanese card game cards that he wears as earrings. Oh, okay. So you'll see people with those every now and then.
Interesting.
Yeah.
While we're talking anime, and this is not my vault pick, Have you watched Delicious in Dungeon?
I watched about the first half a season or so. We just kind of fell off after a while.
It gets very dark.
Does it?
By the end of the first season. But that's a lot of fun.
It's pretty good.
Phoneable content is what I would call it. You don't have to stay. Exactly. You don't have to stay locked in with it
as long as you're watching the dubbed version. Because if it's subbed, you have to read.
You have to read. Yeah, the dubbed version on Netflix. It's like first edition D&D rules.
Exactly. So grimdark.
Like the original monster manual monsters. Mm-hmm. Orcs have pig noses. Like it's
I do love pig-nosed orcs.
It's classic D&D. That's just a whole thing we can talk about sometime. How Western fantasy in Japan is disproportionately influenced by first edition D&D.
Yeah, it's very old school,
and they just haven't kept up with the 4 editions that came after it.
Yeah, but the thing is it's like very stuck in the 70s because it's also not influenced by the stuff before it. Like it's not Tolkien-esque.
No,
it's Gygaxian fantasy.
It is, and it's like because I read a whole article. It's like why are kobolds in Delicious in Dungeon? Why do the kobolds have dog heads? And it's like, because that's the description in the original monster manual. It says they have dog-like faces. Mm-hmm. And so they're dog people in this.
Yeah, they're little dog men.
It's like it comes from a literal translation of the English description in the old monster manual. Mm-hmm. Anyways, that's fun. But that's not what I'm pulling out.
All right, what are you pulling out of the vault?
I'm pulling out, I've got 2 books for you.
Ooh.
Number 1 is Every Man for Himself and God Against All by Werner Herzog.
Oh, God.
A memoir. The audiobook, he narrates it himself. It's his whole life story, his philosophy.
Wow.
And he's had a crazy life. His parents were early and enthusiastic Nazis.
Jesus.
His dad ends up not being a big presence in his life. His mom...
He did not see his father?
He did not see much of him. He did occasionally. His mother, during the war, was like, ooh, I picked the wrong team. And moved them up into the Alps.
She literally did are we the baddies?
Yeah. His mom had we chose bad. It doesn't seem like Dad ever had that moment. But he has this very strange, remote Bavarian childhood in the mountains. And then he becomes this very eccentric auteur guerrilla filmmaker. And, it's a little bit like... a Nick Offerman paddle your own canoe sort of thing. But it's a much more nihilistic, stoic, Bavarian German style version of that. Like
I bet I would like that.
He has a very he's when he's a young man, he decides kind of in protest of partition to hike all the way around the perimeter of Germany.
Dang.
And he hikes through the mountains. He breaks into people's mountain cottages to sleep, and he's an adventurer, and he's like I said earlier, he feels a natural right to filmmaking, and won't let anything stop him from making the movie that he sees in his head. And he's made a lot of movies. And he's just a fascinating guy. And I found this book just riveting. Like I can listen to Werner Herzog talk about.
I love it when people narrate their own books.
Yeah, and it's not the same. So my grandfather's from the Netherlands. It's not the same accent, but there is something in the cadence and the sort of I grew up in a remote Germanic farm sort of thing that feels very comforting and homey to me. So I can listen to Herzog just blah, 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 go on and on. Even when he's saying things that I don't agree with, he's very anti psychoanalyst and things like that. He's he doesn't think people should dig too deeply into the subconscious or know where anything comes from. And I'm like, that's old man dumb talk, and and get healthy. Don't do that. But I'm still captivated by him, and so I found that book very, very informative and entertaining.
All right.
And then the other book is called Monsters: A Fan's Dilemma by Claire Dederer, who also narrates her own book. And it is relevant to situations like this because it is about reckoning with art created by monstrous people. And so the thing that inspires her to explore this is her love of Roman Polanski. And, the director of Rosemary's Baby and notorious child rapist.
Yes, he's a bad dude.
He's a bad guy that made a bunch of brilliant movies, one of possibly the greatest horror movies of all time, but by people's reckoning. So what do you do with something like that? And she talks not just about him, but about people like Pablo Picasso and just people that were monstrous in their life, but created important, significant, beautiful, compelling artworks. What do you do with that? How do you appreciate it while acknowledging what happened? And she doesn't give you any easy answers. Basically, it's up to you. It's always going to be up to you. But I found it very interesting and useful to listen to someone reckon with these dilemmas and explore different artists and, how do we feel about what this person did, and how does it affect how we appreciate the art?
Where do you come down on it?
And this is more or less what her conclusion is. Not to spoil the book, it comes down to what it means personally, what the art means personally to you.
Okay,
and how you feel about the severity of the offense.
Okay.
And she said that when she speaks at college campuses, everyone always asks David Bowie. Can we listen to David Bowie?
Okay.
Because David Bowie, like every single classic rock artist of the 1970s, had statutory rape, had sex with underage girls.
Ugh.
It was the culture of the time. If we throw out everything from people that did that,
sure,
there's no music from the 70s at all.
Sure.
Get rid of Zeppelin, the Stones, all of them. They all did it.
Even Danzig?
It's not that I've heard, but if someone came out and told me, I wouldn't be shocked.
Neither would I.
Yeah. And so I couldn't personally stop listening to David Bowie. You know what I mean? And so I don't know that it gets a pass. I don't say that the behavior was okay. I do think it was accepted in the time, but I couldn't stop listening.
So I think I would add on to that, not that she didn't explore it in a well thought out book, but I agree in that. What does this mean to you, and how bad is the crime? Because I think that those things definitely matter, but I also think that what have they done since? Like, for example, I think David Bowie grew up and acknowledged and at least understood that was not a good thing. He didn't stay that way.
Yeah.
He became a good man and
grew
whereas someone like Varg from Burzum, he made amazing fucking music. He is a killer, but he did his time in prison. But the thing is, and I would be willing to give that all a pass, but he's still a Nazi and he's unrepentant with his racism. He doubles down.
He actually gets worse. Yeah.
Had he changed his ways, like if he had come out of prison and changed his ways, I'd listen to Burzum.
What about...
But he didn't.
When we're talking about these hypotheticals or actual people, let's say Marilyn Manson, we'll call it the fake redemption, right? Where he's like, well, I got sober. I went to Kanye West's church and got baptized again.
Dang.
And I'm on tour with Five Finger Death Punch, and I'm a changed man. But you don't buy it. But he's pretending. He's doing the Russell Brand find Jesus.
Yeah, I don't know. The thing is
does it give you enough cover to listen to it?
The music doesn't mean that much to me.
The early music means that.
I mean, I liked Antichrist Superstar. I still think that's a great album, but that's about it.
Yeah.
I don't really care about anything else. And I don't love it so much that I think that I want to like fly the flag of Marilyn Manson. He's kind of a dildo.
Yeah. more than kind of a dildo. Yeah. No, when I think about it, what emotionally resonates with me when I look back on the Spooky Kid era and that music was us road tripping to Salem. You know what I mean?
Or listening to it in your car when we drive around town, or hanging out with Dana or whatever.
It is less about the music and more about the camaraderie we had around the music.
Yeah, being young kids and hanging out with your friends and listening to music together, that's what I miss.
Yeah.
Not that guy.
Not him. He is, and it's interesting because David Bowie as an artist, who Manson obviously emulated heavily. David Bowie as an artist, I feel connected to him and his art, whereas Marilyn Manson was scenery sort of in memories I had with my friends instead.
Yeah, I totally get that. Like, I think that there's a line that you draw at a certain point, and that equation definitely has how much does this mean to me? With him, not so much.
Yeah.
So I don't really care.
I don't miss it.
Yeah. Whereas for you, David Bowie, and I don't know what really means a lot to me that comes from a shitter.
Yeah.
But
Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, I love that band. It's definitely an amazing band. And yeah, I think that, I don't know, it means a lot. I think they've matured and become, philanthropists and good people and the whole deal. And
that makes a difference. I think trying to be better makes a big difference.
Yeah. And it's not like they're still doing that shit.
Well, we should hope.
I don't think. God.
Maybe.
I mean, Anthony Kiedis, on the other hand.
Woof.
I hate his band, so I'm good for that.
I wish that Hillel Slovak had lived and Anthony Kiedis had died. I'll just say that. I'll say that on my...
I saw a meme that was like, if a guy had a time machine, you see the guy going back and telling Lars and Cliff to switch seats.
Yeah, we could just change who died in certain bands. Yeah. And I don't know. Do you think this is a wild tangent? Do you think these guys like Anthony Kiedis, people that exclusively date teenage girls, do you think they know how pathetic that is? How that comes across?
If I were to guess, I would think that they believe two things. One, that it is their privilege as a wealthy man to date who they please, and then two, to say that an adult woman and a woman of 18 years old cannot choose the partner of her choosing is to diminish her and take her power from her, and you shouldn't do that.
That's fair-ish.
It's fair adjacent. I also happen to have a degree that tells me that your brain is not developed when you're 18 years old, and you probably shouldn't be making that kind of decision.
Yeah.
But that's not how our society works.
Yeah. Yeah. And, yeah. Well, I wish he was dead, but
he's kind of the worst, and I don't like his band. But
I like Blood Sugar Sex Magic. That was a good album.
Whatever.
Even Red Hot Minute's pretty good.
Was it One Hot Minute? I think it's One Hot Minute.
Oh, you're right. It would be too much for the
one with Dave Navarro on it.
Red Hot Minute.
Yeah.
You can tell how long it's been since I listened to it.
You need to go and start spinning that stuff. Fly the flag.
No, I don't think I will.
Well, we'd like to thank you for joining the Nightshade Cult.
Until we meet again, we're wishing you unpleasant dreams.